First edition Flesh and Blood has been a very contentious issue since the game gained massive popularity back in early 2021. The first three sets, Welcome to Wraith, Arcane Rising, and Crucible of War, were on the shelves and affordable right up until the print run numbers were released and people realized just how little there was of these first edition boxes. And so up the prices went. With these sealed boxes now costing in the thousands, the precedent was now apparently set. First edition was to be very small, tiny, limited print runs, and unlimited can just be for those filthy peasant players. And this was the mindset going into Monarch. Many stores were hoarding the first edition product, not releasing all of it because they felt like, oh, it's gonna be worth a lot of money, so we might as well wait and see how high it can go. And then came the crypto crash and the TCG crash immediately following it. And so when the prices started to go down, stores all of a sudden released the floodgates and started to pump product back out into the market. And now it seems like there's a lot more than people originally thought. This has led to the high-end collectors and investors and your average Timmy who jumped on Flesh and Blood because it was the hot new moneymaker to feel burned by LSS. They feel that first edition was promised to be very tiny print runs, to be very expensive and very exclusive, and so finding out that it's no longer the case, they feel like they've been lied to. Thing is, I've never once heard James White or LSS make this claim. In fact, going back to an article that they had written in the early days of the game, they explicitly state that the first edition is meant to be more collectible and investable than Unlimited, but that's not its only purpose or focus. It's just that the product will appeal more to collectors and investors because it has the cold foils. And the cold foils are a sort of reward for the people who were early investors in the game. Those people who believed in Flesh and Blood in its first couple of years now have very expensive collectible cold foils because of how rare they are. Now, there is a very fair argument to make about the dangers of overprinting sets. That being said, I don't think first edition was ever intended to be this unbelievably exclusive product for all time. So yeah, the first three sets had very small print runs, but it was enough to satiate the player demand for quite a long time. I mean, Crucible Unlimited didn't come out until a year after the first edition printing. And the only reason they even made Unlimited is because the game skyrocketed in popularity, driving the prices of first edition to over $1,000 a box. Now with Monarch, the first edition box prices were insane right upon pre-release, so they released Unlimited a month after. And I feel like with Tales of Aria, they released Unlimited soon after as well to prevent what had happened to Monarch. And with Everfest, well, I just have one question. Where's Unlimited Everfest? Because at the moment it looks like we might not even be getting it anytime soon. It's almost like first edition is supposed to be available for longer than just like a week after release, because it's almost like they want to make sure that people who are playing the game can get the first edition product. It's almost like it's also for the regular average player like myself. But I think this was kind of the plan for the start. Release first edition and have enough of it to satiate the player demand for at least several months before then maybe needing to print Unlimited if the demand was high enough. And the whole Monarch fiasco just kind of threw a wrench right into that. But Sloopdoop, why were the first three sets printed so low then? Well, I've got two explanations here. The first is the whole early adopter thing. Maybe they did want the first few first edition print runs to be more limited than the rest of them, so the early adopters, the people who believed in the game from the get-go, would have a nice, shiny, expensive collection. And if that's the case, to be very fair to them, they probably also expected this to happen in a long period of time, not overnight. And that ties into the second explanation. These games normally take a very long time to grow. Remember, before Flesh and Blood, people didn't trust new games. People would see them come out and go, well, that's gonna die in a year, and then they would just not bother to play it. Flesh and Blood changed this mindset. I mean, keep in mind, they're based in New Zealand where they've got about 5.1 million people versus America at 330 million people. And yes, we are living in the age of the internet, but that also means you're competing with the entire world for attention. And I imagine it's much easier to start growing your game around you in a community of people that you can meet in person. James could have actually gone to stores in person to talk to the owners rather than sending them emails halfway across the planet. Now, all this being said, I don't work for LSS. I ultimately know about as much as everybody else does, which is practically nothing. But what I do know is that I have to refilm this ending because we got the print run numbers for Monarch. We got 125,000 boxes of Monarch. I have a whole video coming out about this, so I'm not gonna go into detail, but this is fine. Like, it's more than maybe we needed, but it's not some absurdly high number like 300,000. But ultimately, I do think these print run numbers support my point that first edition isn't supposed to be just exclusively for the collectors and investors. It's for everybody. Like, I never thought that first edition was supposed to be just for high-end collectors and investors, and Unlimited was just for players. But that's just like my opinion, man, because honestly, what do I know? I mean, it's 5:15 in the morning, and I'm recording and editing a YouTube video. I think I'm doing something wrong with my life, that I'm here in a half delusional state, having drank this much of my coffee, and I'm doing this with my life. So I hope you all have a good one, and I hope you enjoy my next video where I talk about these print runs a little more in depth.